China, one of our big, really Trump was always very anti-China, talks a lot of crap about China, like they're our big enemy. Joe Biden does recognize, I think, correctly that China is more of our biggest competitor. They are a rising superpower, and probably in the next 10 to 15 years, maybe 20 years, if things somehow slow down, China will inevitably become our equal on the world stage, if not overpower us on the world stage. So I think that is somewhat inevitable. And now this story comes out, and this is really alarming, that China is targeting rare earth exports to hobble the U.S. defense industry. So what is going on is that China actually is the largest mining and refining country when it comes to rare earth minerals. And we need these rare earth minerals in order to manufacture F-35s, also to manufacture things like cell phones and electric vehicles. So this article right here, this was from Financial Times. It says China is exploring limiting the export of rare earth minerals that are crucial for the manufacture of American F-35 fighter jets and other sophisticated weaponry, according to people involved in a government consultation. It says industry executives said government officials had asked them how badly companies in the U.S. and Europe, including defense contractors, would be affected if China restricted rare earth exports during a bilateral dispute. Says quote, the government wants to know if the U.S. may have trouble making F-35 fighter jets if China imposes an export ban, said a Chinese government advisor who asked not to be identified. Industry executives added that Beijing wanted to better understand how quickly the U.S. could secure alternative sources of rare earths and increase its own production capacity. So it says here, fighter jets such as the F-35, a Lockheed Martin aircraft, rely heavily on rare earths for critical components such as electrical power systems and magnets. Okay, it says the Chinese move follows deteriorating Sino-U.S. relations and an emerging technology war between the two countries. The Trump administration tried to make it harder for Chinese companies to import sensitive U.S. technology, such as high-end semiconductors. The Biden administration has signaled that it would also restrict certain exports, but would work more closely with allies. Now, it says here that Beijing's control of rare earths threatens to become a new source of friction with Washington, but some warn any aggressive moves by China could backfire by prompting rivals to develop their own production capacity. By the way, we should develop our own production capacity. I think if the pandemic taught us anything, it is that we absolutely need to be way more focused on becoming independent. We cannot rely on foreign nations for our materials. That has to stop. And I don't know why that's not the biggest topic of discussion in our government, especially after the pandemic, when we couldn't even get the materials to manufacture basic things like masks. We couldn't get the materials to manufacture things like PCR tests and medicines. I mean, we don't have the manufacturing capabilities here in the United States. We can't even make shoes. If we all needed to quickly become a military, let's say we were somehow invaded, I don't know, by like aliens or something, we couldn't even manufacture shoes. So us offshoring all of our manufacturing and getting our materials all from foreign countries is a bad idea, especially when it comes to items of national security. And there should be an obvious list of what those items are. That would include things such as food, medicine, clothing, shoes, weapons, technology, right? All of these things should be things that the United States is self-contained, able to manufacture and produce rapidly on our own shores without the help of any foreign nation. But no, here we are, right? Now, I'm not necessarily so against, fewer F-35s. I mean, fine. But nonetheless, this is posing a huge threat. This is showing us that that China has the ability right now to basically hobble our military. And it goes on to say exactly why China would want to do this. So here it goes right here. It says, China's foreign ministry said last year it would sanction Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Raytheon for selling arms to Taiwan, the self-ruled island that Beijing claims as its sovereign territory. So they're mad at us for continuing to back Taiwan and arm Taiwan when China feels like that is part of their nation. You know, the way Taiwan, if you don't fully understand what happened and why China thinks Taiwan is theirs, is because there was a war in China, and basically the government of the actual official government of China was losing that war, and they ran off to the island of Taiwan, and all of the rich Chinese ran off with them. And then they sort of set up and said, no, we're China, you know, and the people who won the war and mainland China said, no, we're China. And so they both actually call themselves China. So we call them Taiwan, but over there they call themselves China. One of them's the People's Republic of China, and I think the other one's like the Democratic Republic of China. But nonetheless, they both call themselves China over there. And China says, no, there's one China. They lost the war. They need to come back into the fold. It's, you know, they need to realize they lost the war and that they are part of us. And Taiwan says, no, screw it. We're our own country. So there's this, you know, angst and animosity. It is similar to, let's say, if California or Texas were to break away from the United States and said, screw you, we're not part of your country anymore. And the United States continues to assert that, yes, you are. Stop being a brat. You are. OK, you might not have liked what happened, but you're still part of us. Or it'd be similar to the South, you know, during the during the Civil War, had the South, even after losing the war, still said, no, we're not part of you. We're going to still create our own nation. That's kind of what's going on over there in a nutshell. So mainland China, not so thrilled about that, says, no, you guys are part of China, whether you like it or not. And Taiwan says, yeah, screw you. So, and the U.S. says, yeah, screw you. We're with them. We're with the rich ones and the old government that ran off to Taiwan. So, here's where it says right here also. It says the proposed guidelines would require rare earth producers to follow export control laws that regulate shipments of materials that help safeguard state security, says China's State Council and Central Military Commission. They will have the final say on whether the list should include rare earths. It says rare earth minerals are also central to the manufacture of products including smartphones, electric vehicles, and wind turbines. So this is not just about the F-35. This is also about technology, our phones, our electric vehicles, our wind turbines. I mean, those are really important things. It says here that some executives and officials, however, are questioning the wisdom of formally including rare earths in the export control regime. They argue that it would motivate Beijing's rivals to accelerate their own production capacities and undermine China's dominance of the industry. Here's the thing, though. It's going to be really difficult. Now, this is where the conversation becomes very nuanced, okay? I believe that it's obvious at this point, especially after the pandemic and with threats like this, it is obvious that the United States needs to become self-sufficient. We need to say, okay, we as a country need to become a bit more isolationist and we need to become a bit more America first. That is absolutely necessary. I don't care if you didn't like the previous president. That is something that should be obvious to you at this point. However, China actually mines. It's not just about mining the rare earth minerals. You can mine them kind of anywhere. But the thing about China is they actually have the ability to refine the rare earth minerals. I'm trying to find it here in this article where it says this. But China actually mines, they actually refine 80% of the rare earth minerals. So the problem is that we have to send off those minerals to China in order for them to process them in a way that we can actually then use them. And then we're able to use them. The problem with that, and this is where it's going to get really tricky to convince a lot of people of the fact we need to become a bit more isolationist, is the amount of pollution that is created when you have to refine these rare earth minerals is massive. It's a lot of pollution. So good luck talking a lot of Democrats, those who are absolutely for the Green New Deal and whatnot, which, hey, you know, I am all for the environment as well. I was an environmental activist. I've done more for the environment just by virtue of writing an anti-deforestation bill and proposing that to the U.S. government than a lot of other people. So believe me, like, I am not somebody, you know, don't go accusing me of being somebody who doesn't care about the environment. That is not true. But at the same time, one of the reasons why the U.S. has been able to lower our carbon footprint over the years, so we can all pat ourselves on the back and say, yay, we've done a great job, we've lowered our carbon footprint, is because we've offshored the manufacturing. We've moved the manufacturing to other countries, and manufacturing causes a lot of pollution. We are still the #1 consuming country on the planet. We consume more goods than any other nation on earth per capita. So we are actually creating a lot of pollution simply because we're a very gluttonous society that consumes. Well, part of the problem and part of the conversation that's going to be that we're really going to need to have here, if we're going to combat the rise of China, and the fact that that's inevitable. I don't think we're going to be able to stop them from rising and becoming an equal, if not bigger, world power. Probably bigger. They have 5 times the population. One of the issues that we're going to have is trying to convince people that we're going to have to bring back that manufacturing onto our own shores. And that means that we're going to have to allow some level of pollution. Mining, obviously, a lot of people don't like mining, and a lot of people don't like refining. And because both of those are environmentally unfriendly. But what do? The alternative seems pretty scary, that we would just continue to rely on China that at any given moment could shut us down. Again, we saw this during the pandemic. We couldn't get supplies. Countries, rightfully so, began hoarding those supplies for themselves. This is what China wants to do. So it is also saying that China's not just wanting to stop the export of rare earth minerals because they're wanting to stick it to us because we're giving Taiwan weapons. That's not the only reason. China is actually consuming more rare earth minerals than they have. They need more for their own country. So because they need so many for themselves, they can't export it out anymore. So they're sitting there thinking, well, this could work maybe both ways, right? That they could, on one hand, they could also kind of stop us from our military aggressions around the world. One other thing that, and I've covered it on this channel, China, they've got their Belt and Road Initiative. And interestingly, all along the Belt and Road Initiative, there always seems to be, in one of their main big ports, their stops on the Belt and Road, there just seems to be some sort of crisis that goes on, typically revolving around extremism. So there's the Islamist extremists have risen all around Southeast Asia, all throughout Central Asia, and into more of Africa. And these are all areas that China has been really looking at and relying on for the Belt and Road Initiative. And, conveniently, terrorist groups that are connected to essentially Al-Qaeda and ISIS keep cropping up all over in these places where they want to set up. I don't think that's actually a coincidence. I think that's a concerted effort to stop and slow their Belt and Road Initiative. So China's, I'm sure, on to that. They're not a very outwardly aggressive nation, right? They do things very under wraps. They keep a very straight poker face, and they just sort of continue chugging along without really fully blaming or pointing the finger too sternly at the United States. But they're not dumb. And so I think they probably have also connected the dots, just like I've been able to, that coincidentally to have all of their areas, their major ports and stops for the Belt and Road to suddenly be infiltrated with extremists, the same extremists that we were helping fund and export the ideology all around the Middle East in order to control it. They see that playbook. They know that we've done that for many, many years, and they see that it's potentially being used against them at this point. So they've got reason to hinder the U.S.'s military specifically. They have 2 good reasons. The first is we are hindering their Belt and Road Initiative. They have reason to suspect that it's us helping with our Saudi partners, which is one of the reasons why we're not willing to cut off our relationship with Saudi Arabia, is they do a lot of dirty work for us. Same thing with Israel. They do a lot of dirty work for us, things that we can't do or things that we can't get caught doing. We have proxies that do it for us. And so we've got these countries that do these things for us, and China's onto it. So they say, we've got to do something to kind of limit the United States military aggressions. Stopping the rare earth mineral export would be a great way to do this. And the second thing is they're just pissed off that we continue to help Taiwan and Hong Kong. And now we're kind of going after the Xinjiang region, the Uyghurs. That's another region of China that part of the big Chinese empire that has expanded over the years, over the centuries, really, or even thousands of years, kind of shifted around and whatnot, has been into these various different regions where at times China was in those regions, controlling the regions, and then something historically happens and maybe they're kind of kicked out of the region and then they come back in. And there's all of these areas that China believes is part of their great empire, and they're not going to let them go without a fight. And so I think they see that we're turning, that we've already been helping Taiwan. We're we're talking about Hong Kong and the rise of protests there and how those are beautiful sights to behold. And we've got now the Xinjiang region, and we're saying that is now a genocide or a terrorist. I think we're saying now that it's genocide that's going on in the Xinjiang region. We don't have any evidence of genocide. We know what genocide looks like. We've seen that in places like Rwanda and Somalia and Bosnia. Those were genocides. We could see what that looked like. We know what that looks like. It's very graphic. But what we're doing now is we're pointing the finger at China and trying to place a lot of blame on them. And it's really all an attempt to hinder their Belt and Road Initiative and to stop their growth and to stop them from rising to become the next great power. We know that our time is limited and that the clock is ticking and that China is eventually going to take over. And the powers that be, really would like to slow that down and stop it as much as they possibly can. So, I have a very nuanced take when it comes to China. I do not agree that China is this big, I don't agree with the left on their take with or even now the right. I guess they're sort of adopting this as well, the Xinjiang region and the Uyghurs. I don't agree with that assessment on that. I've got videos on that you can watch. I don't agree with the assessment of China being this evil enemy, the way that Donald Trump talked about them. However, I do agree with Joe Biden on this, that China is our great competitor. And I agree with Donald Trump in that we need to become more America first and isolationist in order to combat how competitive they are going to be for us. And the fact that if we continue to rely on them for all of our goods and materials and for things like refining minerals, we are never going to be able to combat them in any meaningful way because we're going to be too reliant on them. And that is not a good thing. We do not want to be reliant on China. You don't want to become China. You just don't. Many of you that, and I know there's a lot of people that sort of romanticize China, and they've got like this idea that, well, no, China's great. There's a lot of people that really sort of sympathize with communism or they sympathize with socialism of that brand. And I could tell you as a woman who is part Chinese, I'm Vietnamese, but I've got a little bit of Chinese in me, that I don't think the majority of Americans could handle the society or the way of life of, I was thinking about this today, how if Tiger Mom suddenly showed up, and became your mother, and basically our country was ran like a Tiger Mom country, which China is. I mean, we saw what happened during the pandemic. They went into severe lockdown. That is so antithetical to Western mentalities and ideologies that I don't think we would be able to live in a world where that sort of way of living was forced on us. I just don't think that that's really in the U.S. or Western psyche to handle. A Tiger Mom government is what I would really like to call it. So we do need to keep ourselves contained and reliant on ourselves as a country. That I think is a matter of national security. And China saying that they're going to that they are looking into limiting the export of rare earth minerals is a showcasing of that we really do need to be more reliant on ourselves.